COVID definitely provided quite a lot of challenges and perhaps a few silver linings. As a professor of art history, I got to think of some fun solutions, or maybe I suppose silver linings to needing to do everything remotely. In a practical way, I basically integrated more online resources than I had been doing in person classes. So took my classes on virtual tours of the Versailles Gardens and the Sistine Chapel and online collections of the museums in New York. And then because they were remote anyways, they were looking at what's at the Louvre, using the resources that they wouldn't have otherwise kind of unlocked in their minds. I suppose, I should say I am an adjunct, which means I work at 4 universities. And if COVID provided kind of a practical help, it was that I didn't have to commute to multiple locations on multiple modes of transportation throughout the day. My back problems got better and I saved about 2 to 3 hours a day by not, running around like a mad woman to different locations, streamlining my time. I think the biggest stressor probably for everybody, was just psychologically, particularly at the beginning when everything was so scary. On one hand, it sort of felt like we could, as a professor, as a faculty member, I could provide some level of stability or some structure at a time when everything just felt like a complete mess. But that didn't really stick around for that long. And then ultimately, when students were getting sick, when students' family members were getting sick, it felt like, how are you supposed to make them care about whatever you're trying to teach them when there's a pandemic and people are getting sick and people are dying, that you can't possibly talk about, their essays that are coming up that are due. Getting students to care about a class that they might not really care about in the before times, that's a nice challenge. That's a thing about being a professor that we all enjoy. Having to decide how to continue engaging them when they're losing family members, scared of getting sick themselves. We're all processing this at the same time, and they're essentially children that don't have the same facilities that we do. It was really a kind of a psychological, almost existential sort of challenge that has now sort of leveled off because we're more than a year in and people have grown accustomed mentally, I think, to some extent. For me, that was one of the hardest things at the beginning, was kind of feeling like I wanted to be everyone's therapist with absolutely no training. And I would like to think that there was some kind of camaraderie or some kind of, feeling like we're not alone, but it's been hard to keep that at the front of our minds when we're all just so isolated. We're all lucky to still have the Adelphi community and be employed at a time when so many aren't. I really am proud of how much my students have really pushed through and found ways to still care about stuff that they don't necessarily really need to when people are dying around them.